This is A Rude Awakening. I'm Sabrina Jacobs. On today's show, I spend the hour with the executive director of Vote Solar, Sachu Constantine, discussing how solar, batteries, and distributed energy resources are reshaping the U.S. power system. And DSGS, the Demand Side Grid Support Program. But first, the news.
I'm Max Pringle with these headlines. President Trump has chosen not to sign a sweeping housing affordability bill today in protest of Congress not approving a strict voter ID bill that does not have enough support to pass. Sagar Magani has more.
President Trump says he will let a bipartisan housing affordability bill become law without his signature. It's the most sweeping effort in decades to address housing costs, but the president's refusing to sign it in protest of Congress not passing a strict voter ID bill.
We want to keep America great, and we will do so by approving the Save America Act,
which does not have enough support to pass. The president was to sign the housing bill 2 weeks ago, but scrapped it.
He's petulant, he's angry, and he looks ridiculous.
Top Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer. The president's refusal is boosting GOP concerns about addressing rising costs in an election year. The housing bill will become law either way. The president had 10 days to veto it, but chose not to. Sagar Magani at the White House.
A series of unclaimed airstrikes have struck Iran after the U.S. said it ended its attacks. That's raising questions about who targeted the Islamic Republic. The strikes on Thursday hit areas across southern Iran as the country buried the late Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed in U.S.-Israeli airstrikes at the start of the conflict in February. More from Stuart Smith.
U.S. Central Command had earlier confirmed hitting around 90 targets across Iran over 2 days of strikes, which Iran's health ministry says killed at least 14 people and wounded 78. Sally Lockwood is a reporter in Dubai.
There have been reports of a third night of explosions in Iran, centered around the south of the country, but also in the southwestern city of Bushehr, where Iran's main nuclear power plant is. Apparently there have been more explosions there, according to Iranian state media. But curiously, Washington hasn't confirmed that they are behind this third night of strikes. In fact, a US official speaking to multiple media outlets overnight said that they weren't planning a third night of attacks.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Stuart Smith.
President Trump dismissed all 3 remaining members of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission on Thursday. The move abruptly disables the only federal agency devoted solely to election administration at a moment when Trump has sought to reshape federal voting rules. The 2 Democratic commissioners, Thomas Hicks and Benjamin Hovland, were notified by email. The 3rd commissioner, Republican Christy McCormick, was allowed to resign. That's according to sources within the agency not authorized to speak publicly. The firings leave the 4-member commission with no commissioners. That means it cannot take official action until new members are installed. They also come days after the Supreme Court granted the president power to fire leaders of independent agencies, weakening a legal framework that for decades had insulated bipartisan federal commissions from direct White House control. Temporary protective status holders from 7 countries, including Haiti and Syria, are set to lose their ability to legally work starting today. Legal experts say, however, that the date is a placeholder. The Supreme Court decision last month that undid TPS didn't immediately end the program, granting the temporary right to work for immigrants fleeing war and natural disaster in their homelands. Instead, it pushed it back to the district courts, which are now charged with issuing an implementation order. That leaves TPS holders and their employers in limbo as they wait for the program's official termination. Legal experts say to permanently stay in the U.S., TPS holders must seek another avenue like asylum, marriage, or employment. Oakland Mayor Barbara Lee named interim police chief James Beer as the city's new permanent chief. The move comes amid turmoil in a department under federal oversight and with several chiefs cycling through in recent years. KPFA's Annetta Felix has more.
It is my great honor to appoint interim police chief James Beer as the next chief of the Oakland Police Department. Chief Beer, congratulations, and join me.
That's Oakland Mayor Barbara Lee announcing the selection of James Beer as the new head of the Oakland Police Department. Oakland's police department has spent more than 2 decades under federal oversight, the longest of any police department in U.S. history. That oversight dates back to a 2003 settlement stemming from the so-called Riders scandal, in which a group of rogue officers were accused of planting evidence, beating suspects, and filing false police reports in West Oakland. A judge is set to hold a hearing later this year on whether to finally end it. Ultimately, Mayor Lee said she chose Beer for these reasons.
He embraces meaningful civilian oversight and constitutional policing and understands that both are important.
Reporting for KPFA Radio, I'm Annetta Felix.
Officials say one of Spain's deadliest ever wildfires has killed at least 11 people and 19 others are listed as missing. Climate change is being blamed for hot, dry conditions that contributed to the fire and to a rise in deaths linked to heat illnesses. More from Karen Chamas.
Spanish authorities say a wildfire has killed at least 11 people in Almeria in southeastern Spain, as soaring temperatures gripped much of the country. Some 150 firefighters were battling the blaze, and 220 soldiers from a military emergency unit had been deployed. Local media reported that several victims of the fire were found inside burnt-out vehicles. Authorities have not confirmed the cause of the fire, but said people who called to report it also said that a fallen power line had sparked a blaze that spread rapidly into a nearby forest. I'm Karen Chamas.
Mostly sunny today in the San Francisco Bay Area, highs in the 70s and 80s, lows tonight in the 50s. In the Central Valley, a heat advisory is in effect, highs around 100, lows tonight in the 60s. In the LA area, sunny, highs in the 80s, overnight lows in the 60s. Those are the headlines. I'm Max Pringle on KPFA.
Welcome back. We are back. This is A Rude Awakening. I'm Sabrina Jacobs. Today we're going to have a discussion about how solar batteries and distributed energy resources are reshaping the U.S. power system. And we're going to talk about what that means for electricity cost, reliability, and access. So we're going to break it up into 3 main topics of discussion, centered around the historic shift in power generation. Number 2, how the grid is being rebuilt around flexibility. And number 3, the new distributed grid that is emerging. And layered on top of these 3 topics is a description of how the demand-side grid support program created by the California Energy Commission plugs into it all. And here to talk about it with me is Sachu Constantine. And Sachu Constantine is the executive director of Vote Solar. And he is a leading national expert in the regulatory landscape of the solar industry. He has an impressive track record of successfully guiding strategy and operations for teams of energy experts and advocates. And Mr. Constantine is also a former staffer at the California Public Utilities Commission. And just to note, Vote Solar is a nonprofit policy advocacy organization with the mission of making solar more accessible and affordable across the United States. Welcome to A Rude Awakening, Mr. Sachu Constantine.
Thank you for having me. Really glad to be here, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm glad that our reputation precedes us, and happy to be here.
Indeed it does. Indeed it does. So, and yours does as well. You have 3 decades of experience advancing an equitable, clean energy policy. So let's talk about the historic shift. So what does this mean for the future of public utilities, namely PG&E here in the Bay Area, as far as what's happening with the grid?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do want to say it has been an extraordinary privilege for me to be working on this transition at this time. The last 30, 40 years have seen incredible advances in the clean energy sector, in the solar sector. When Vote Solar started in 2001, uh, solar was a niche product. It was a disruptive product. It was something that off-grid users wanted, that astronauts were taking advantage of. But at that moment, coming off of the California energy crisis, caused, of course, by Enron mostly, but
Right.
also a reflection of the climate threats and changes that we're facing, the rising cost of fossil fuels, and all of that. We have since that moment, since that moment of being a disruptive technology, we have really moved to a point where solar is the most affordable, low-cost source of new energy. The technology around delivering solar energy to our homes, to our businesses, to our cities, hospitals, schools, and the like, has really become uh, sophisticated and interconnected in ways that make it a mainstream energy player. And that transition for Vote Solar from an upstart niche technology to really a critical piece of the transition is this historic shift. In May,
Hmm.
uh, solar generated more electricity than coal did across the entire United States for the first time over a single full month. That's a critical measure. In California, for the first half of this year, first 5 months anyway of this year, solar has far outpaced natural gas generation, actual generation of the electrons that show up in our homes and businesses. Solar is responsible for more of it than gas. That is a critical step in the path to a clean energy future. These facts, these figures, they're going to keep coming up worldwide. It's the most common new source of energy. It's the largest source of new capacity additions to the global grid, as well as the US and the California grid. And these factors, these measures really show us that we are moving along the right path. We still have a lot of work to do to make it competitive. The old industries, the fossil industry is not going to just go away on its own.
Yeah, they're not. They're not going to go away in that dark night, or however that phrase goes.
Yeah.
They're just not. It's just too much money. I mean, we're talking about a for-profit industry. So you have an insider's knowledge of how they could react to the new reality, and even more specifically, how they might try to control it and profit from this new norm that's emerging. Um, let's speculate for a bit. How do you think that they could do that or would do that?
Yeah, it's a great question and one that we as policymakers really do have to grapple with. I don't want to think of this as an adversarial transition, but it is. 150 years of fossil fuel dominance and monopolization has made not only these fossil producers, but the utilities that use those fossils um, very accustomed to the kinds of profits, the kinds of control that we have seen,
Mm.
and they're not going to give that up easily. One of the ways that we do expect, uh, sort of call it profit taking, is to what we call gold plate the system. We know there are problems. We know that when we have winter storms like we did in Texas a few years ago, or summer
Right.
heat waves, that the cost of energy goes up very quickly, and the need for that energy, the critical need for heating or cooling or processing water or any of the other needs that we have for our energy, they
Mhm.
become very dear, very, very expensive, and absolutely critical to human health.
Mhm.
Well, what happens is that they start to charge premiums. We saw the massive bills that came due for customers in Texas. We see the increasingly unaffordable bills that families in the Central Valley are facing because of their high cooling needs in these hot summers. We've seen all of the affordability questions that come up across the entire country because utilities and the energy producers that provide them with the fossil fuels are charging enormous, egregious amounts for the energy that they provide us. They are going to gold plate the system to make sure that we are still dependent on these central gas plants, that we spend a lot of money on expensive new transmission lines, which, let me just say as a caveat, we do need them, but we need to be very careful about which ones we choose and where we put them and how we build them. So new transmission lines, making sure that we're weather hardened, that we're hardening the grid. Well, there are expensive ways to do that, and there are more efficient and cleaner and safer ways to do that that are also more affordable. And that's what we want to focus on. How do we choose those affordable pathways, those safer, cleaner pathways that don't, as I said, gold plate the grid, only build the resources that we need, that we can use most effectively. And one of the issues is that when I put solar on my roof, some of the profit available from that goes to me, it goes to my community, goes to the people around me. It doesn't go to the utility. So they're going to try to avoid some of these more affordable solutions, some of these more affordable investments, because it doesn't align with their incentives. And that's what I think we really need to watch out for. Where is the alignment of incentives? What are we asking the utilities and the public utilities commissions to invest in to provide us with that affordable, reliable, clean energy future?
So where does flexibility plug into all that, right? So we got the bottom line. We've got these folks, we got PG&E folks, we've got Southern California Edison folks, we got the folks down in San Diego. We got all three of those folks groups that are that are secretly worrying about their bottom line. Okay, yeah, solar's great. Yeah, okay, great. But how are they going to be plugging themselves into creating a better bottom line? How are they plugging themselves into the flexibility narrative? Because it's still somewhat of a narrative right now, right?
Right. It's a narrative, and we should unpack what that word means,
There we go.
flexibility. But it absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
flexibility is another way of saying affordability and reliability.
Exactly.
Right. So we pay for energy, and we should be seeking the safest, cleanest, most affordable energy to provide our needs. Again, cooking, cleaning, heating, cooling, all of the things that we need in our buildings and businesses and homes. Flexibility is the idea that in the modern world, in the modern energy economy, we have to respond not just to the 9 to 5 workday and everybody has dinner at 6 o'clock and very predictable loads. We have a changing environment, a very fast-paced, I'll use the word again here, flexible environment where we need to be responsive, right?
Right.
We can no longer just crank up a nuclear power plant, which takes days to get up to full speed and can't really turn up and down very quickly, because we know exactly what the load is going to look like. We need to have responses in real time to people's needs. We're charging vehicles all over the cities and towns that we live in. We are running our computers and laundry machines and hot water heaters at different times during the day. This is all about being able to respond in real time to the load, to the demand on the system. That's what flexibility really means. If you only have a spotlight, if you only have a big giant spotlight designed to light up a football field, it's hard to do work at your desk or to have nice dinner lighting or all the other things that we want lighting for. So when we talk about flexibility, we're talking about moving from a system where we only have spotlights, we only have big giant central plants, usually fossil fired, that move electricity along transmission lines to our homes in bulk. We are now talking about a system that has multiple sources of energy that can move up and down in scale very quickly, respond in real time within seconds. A battery can get up to its maximum output from an idle state in seconds, in milliseconds. In fact, it can respond to differences in demand on the grid. That flexibility is ultimately more affordable. It opens up more resources that we can use, my home solar as well as a big central solar station plant. And that's what flexibility means, and that's what people need and want, because that underlies the reliability and the affordability that they really are concerned about.
Hmm. Indeed, indeed. So if the grid is being rebuilt, what does that mean for PG&E, Southern California Edison, and the San Diego power people, the workers? What does that mean for the workers versus the bottom line? Because we're talking about a serious, hardcore transition from being
That's
able
right.
to work in those industries. I mean, there's two different industries we're talking about. We're talking about the fossil fuel industry, and then we're talking about the solar industry. So what does that mean
Right.
for those worker transition situations and issues?
Yeah, I mean the grid that we use
Mhm.
is the most complex machine ever created by humankind, right?
Yeah.
It moves from this big bulk transmission system, the big plants that we know about, the transmission wires. It moves down into what we call the distribution system. We have historically, at least over the last few decades, ignored that distribution system. This transition is going to involve lots of investments. Some of those investments will go to the transmission scale. That is true. But a lot more needs to go into the distribution system, the wires that are connected directly to our buildings, to our homes and businesses, the systems that move electrons around within the city, within the towns, within the states and rural regions that we live in. And that investment is going to require labor. There has been traditionally concern from labor that works on transmission lines that investing in the distribution system will hurt their bottom line. People that work at the distribution level are often worried that all of the attention is on building new transmission and new big plants and forgetting the need to make our neighborhoods more modern, more reliable, and more able to accommodate solar and storage and EVs. That tension doesn't need to exist, in part because there's plenty of work to go around. The skill sets are there. Workers in IBEW have a broad range of skill sets that apply both to distribution and transmission level work, and there will be plenty of work to go around. So I think that's an important note. But the investment, this transition, uh, uh, through flexibility really is going to look like to us investments in that distribution network. It's going to mean um, uh, circuit level improvements in the wires that go in and out of our homes. It's going to mean that the transformers and the interconnections between our homes, our neighborhood, and the next neighborhood over are strengthened and improved so that electricity can move between neighborhoods. The solar surplus in a sunny Berkeley neighborhood can help the homes that are in a more shaded neighborhood that happen to be on a different circuit, as long as the distribution system can move those electrons around. And now the investment that my neighbors have made in solar is benefiting my slightly farther away neighbors in a shadier district or maybe in an apartment building. At the same time, we want those apartment buildings and renters and shopping malls to be able to install solar, and we need better distribution lines for them, better interconnection policies for them, better technology access for them so that everybody can participate in some way or form in these investments. The utilities' job is to make sure that the system is able to handle all of this. Our job is to hold the utilities accountable to that and to then put our money where our mouth is and invest in and use these clean energy technologies to the best of our ability. It's to our advantage, really, because they are the more affordable resource.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So it sounds like IBEW is it's going to be left up to them to make sure these workers are trained or retrained in
Yeah, well, I think there are
so
many
that they're
efforts
able to.
underway.
Mhm,
Oh,
okay, okay,
I,
well,
I, I apologize. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but yes, I think
it's okay.
the labor industry is going to work on retraining. I think we have a lot of efforts underway to help up and coming workers get trained in solar technology and battery technology, to work on EVs and induction cookers. These are incredibly important technologies. They are accessible in the sense of understanding how they work and being plug and play, but we're going to need workers to install them. We're going to need workers to service and maintain the systems that support these technologies. We saw, for example, an incredible growth in labor in the solar sector in California as we were actively supporting deployment of rooftop solar across the state. As soon as we saw the state step away from that under this last administration and several series of rulings from the PUC, taking away from California's focus on expanding rooftop solar, we saw those jobs shrink almost immediately. There was a
Right.
massive impact on labor here.
Hmm.
It goes the other way, though. If we return to a focus on deploying these assets and resources, the labor demand will help us create a new generation of wage earners that can support a, uh, a their lifestyle, that can support the kinds of economic development that we want to see for our state, for our neighbors, for folks looking to enter the workforce, and for folks looking to stay in the workforce. These are mutually beneficial developments.
Hmm. Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. Definitely, definitely. So let's see here. In regards to, because I'm going to revisit this question again because I think it's something that we're all looking for. I think we're all bracing for it. Anybody who has ever had a PG&E bill in their name, has
Yeah.
had to deal with these, astronomical, insane prices that we've had to deal with. Here comes winter. Okay, so wait a minute, I got a budget for a $70 power bill because I know I'm going to have to stay warm, and
Mhm.
situations like that. And so, what do you just between you and me, it's just you and me having a conversation here, Sachu Constantine. Um, what do you anticipate? PG&E specifically, since you have a lot of experience dealing with them, trying to push for equitable equitable power situation. What do you think they're going to do? You're there. You're privy to all the machinations that are being put forth to, and you're a part of pushing for this equanimity. What do you think? How are they going to push back
Well,
so that they're making money, so that they're
yeah,
lining their
I mean,
pockets?
and you and I both know that for better or worse, we currently
Hmm.
exist in a capitalist, profit motivated economy.
Exactly.
PG&E um, is no different than any other actor in that situation. They are given a set of incentives, a set of opportunities to seek profit, and they will act as rationally as they can. I'm not saying that they always do, but we should expect them to follow their incentives. And that's what they're going to do. Well, what are their incentives? Their incentives are to convince the PUC that the investments that they're making are worthwhile and they should be compensated for them. That's
Hmm.
how they make their money. And so they are going to point to the need for the resources that they see profiting them the most. That's what they're going to do. Well, historically, as it turns out, that is the investments in transmission lines, that is the investments in large central peaker plants, even though they don't own those plants themselves, building the resources needed to deliver the power from those plants is how they make their profits. It turns out that many of these utilities, and not just PG&E, but many utilities across the country, are owned by companies which have upstream fossil extraction interests. Well, it's in their interest then to continue to rely on fossil fuels. So that's what we should expect them to do, unless and until we change the incentives that are in front of them. They are always going to seek to build and deploy the resources from which they will gain the most profit. The problem for all of us is that those resources, fossil resources, central gas plants, transmission lines, they are also the resources that put us at risk. They put us at risk for global conflict over oil, like we're seeing right now in the Middle East. They put us at risk for environmental impacts, like we see from sagging transmission lines starting fires that burn our cities and homes, like we see from the pollution and the asthma rates in underserved communities that are downwind or downstream from the pollution from these plants. That's the unfortunate reality of the incentives that we've put in front of them. So what we need to do, and California has made some starts in this, other states, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, Colorado, New York, have also made starts in this way. We need to put different incentives in front of them, different direction in front of them, because we do face an affordability crisis. We do face climate crises, colder winters, harsher winters, hotter summers, harsher summers, less rain, more rain. All of that is happening simultaneously, and our system needs to respond. So they're not being irrational. They are doing what they are signaled to do, and they are responding to the situation that we see. Unfortunately, it's hitting us in our pocketbooks, it's hitting us in our lungs, it's hitting us in the safety that we experience in our own homes and towns. And there are alternatives available. That is the key. We can incentivize utilities through programs like the Demand Side Grid Services program in California, or through some of the other programs across the country, to invest in the accessibility for customer-owned and customer-sited renewables and batteries and EVs and other electronic equipment. We can build a system that allows all of that access, all of that resource into the system, pushing costs down, or at least keeping costs from rising so quickly, giving us more control over our energy bills, a more distributed model that includes opportunities for everybody to participate, that isn't only at the behest or at the direction of the utilities like PG&E, is the better system. It responds to the right incentives. It answers the right questions. We have to ask the utilities the right question. And then I think they can be allies and partners. They just cannot be the dominant and only force, because that will lead us down the path of more expensive, less reliable, less clean energy.
All right, that's the voice of Sachu Constantine, and he is the executive director of Vote Solar, a leading national expert in the regulatory landscape of the solar industry. And he has an impressive track record of successfully guiding, as we're speaking now, guiding strategy and operations for teams of energy experts and advocates. And Mr. Constantine is also a former staffer at the California Public Utilities Commission. So, yeah, so guiding them, Sachu, guiding PG&E into the right direction or towards the right space of you can be happy over there, right? Because we're talking about the organism doing what makes the organism successful, right?
Right.
Simple.
Right.
Very simple. And not to sound condescending, but we're all trying to make a better way, and it's obvious. It's obvious how narrow-minded this grift is by PG&E and all these other utilities here in the state of California and beyond. It's a grift. Bottom line, it's a grift. I mean, Enron.
Yeah.
Enron is a perfect
And
example of it. Enron is a perfect example of that greed. And it's not something that is sustainable. It's not something that's sustainable. Go ahead. You're going to say something. Go ahead.
no, absolutely. I think you're on the right track, and I would be remiss if I didn't encourage you to continue asking these exact questions, pointing out the obviousness of um, misaligned incentives,
Yeah.
right? The incentive for utility is to convince the regulators, the people that make these decisions, that their bottom line access to capital is the most important thing. That uh, their preservation of them as an entity is the most important thing. Utilities like PG&E, unfortunately, and I don't believe intentionally, but through the decisions that they made, have burned entire towns to the ground, have caused death and suffering, have lit states on fire. Um, Again, I don't believe out of criminal malice, but as you point out, right, it's the inherent incentives in the system lead to these decisions that ultimately hurt us. And so, you know, grift is unfortunately becoming such a prevalent dynamic in our society, thanks to the grifter in chief and others like that. I should stay away from politics. It's not the space that I normally like to live in. Where I want to live is how we create a society where we're making the best decisions, where our decisions are based on the common interests that we have and that we share. The grid is a public resource. It is not a private resource. It is a public resource. It should be there to benefit all of us. Increasingly, utilities like PG&E have treated it like their private domain, have insisted on decisions supporting them as if they were the private owner of these assets. And what we want to do is make it once again be a public resource operated for the public benefit, giving us all access to the cleanest, most affordable resources, giving us all the agency that we should have over our own energy choices.
Right.
And that is not possible so long as we continue to grant carte blanche monopoly power to the utilities to decide what resources are allowed on, when they're allowed on, how much they get compensated. These are things that should be determined by the common public interest. We often use markets to determine those things, and I think there's a space for markets here. There is a space for signals from the market about what we need and when we need it to help inform the value of these resources. We just want that value to get to the people that need that value, that deserve that value, that invested in their solar and their batteries. We want them to get that value and not for PG&E and other utilities to swoop in and just preempt all of that value for themselves.
Yeah, yeah, grift their way through it. Yeah. So let's see here. So how do we put a stop to it? How do we stop them, or how do we force them into an equitable transition? So is there legislation that will
Yeah.
benefit low income consumers, pending or present legislation, as well as incorporate these transitions that we're discussing now? And it's my understanding that the demand side grid support, or the DSGS, is funded all the way through to the end of the year, because Newsom was nice enough to get his signature on that paperwork before he leaves office. But start by describing to us all, Sachu Constantine, what demand side grid support is, what that program is created by the California Energy Commission. Go ahead.
Yeah, and if you will indulge me for a little bit of history,
Yes, please.
California has a great history as an innovator, as a leader in the field of developing clean energy. You know, the first protest against oil wells came here out of California. The environmental movement has always been very strong here. That's why solar took off. There was fertile ground here, and we had some innovation um, built in to that process. And California was a real leader in developing solar rooftops. One of the complaints and concerns in that history was always, well, it's costing us money to let rich coastal homeowners put solar on their roof and get this net metering. How can we better take advantage of that technology? So we started to think about what we would call virtual power plants or community power networks, how to actually use this deployment of clean energy through the California Solar Initiative, through the Self-Generation Incentive Program, through other programs. Um, and we've developed ways, tariffs and other policy structures and market structures that we can coordinate all of these resources, all of the millions of homes in California that have solar in a way that benefits the whole system. And it happens through the demand side. And eventually all of that thinking and that work became this program called the DSGS, the demand side grid support program. That program, as it was initially conceived under a proceeding at the California Public Utilities Commission, was going to be a way to coordinate all of these resources, both the generation resources like solar and resources like batteries, but also flexible load like EV charging and induction cooking and heat pumps that can turn on and off as needed according to the way that we're operating the grid. So tying that all together into what amounts to a power plant, right? Because we can now dispatch it. We can turn it up or turn it down. We can provide more energy or take more energy from the grid to keep it all in balance. That's a way to make the whole system more affordable. So this DSGS program comes out of this long history. There's another piece of the history, though, that I want to talk about as we talk about what's currently happening, and that is from the get-go in 2006 and 2007, when we were rolling out this California Solar Initiative, we recognized that very often low income, underserved, or underrepresented communities get left behind in these sorts of transitions, get left behind when opportunities arise to move to a new system, to invest in new technologies, to take advantage of new possibilities. So that they built in both a multifamily and a single family home, a low income homeowner and renter program. And we tried to make solar more available to these communities that need it, the ones that face the highest energy burden right now. And that was really important because that has set a tone for us in California. And that tone and this history of innovation, they need to work together to deliver programs that give access to the very communities that need it the most, that will benefit the most from it. And if we're doing that, if we are making sure that Bayview Hunters Point has as much access to solar as my neighborhood in North Berkeley, we are going to build a system that is more affordable. So that's the context for this DSGS issue. You are absolutely right. It is fantastic that the governor, in the budget that we just assigned, has continued to fund the DSGS program through the end of the year. That is a great victory. That is the right thing to do. It is a manufactured crisis. We did not need to zero out the DSGS program. It was previously authorized. It is a very cost-effective program. I want to give praise where praise is due, but I also want to acknowledge that the crisis for this program and the lack of of a strong planning horizon for this also lies with this administration, right? The Newsom administration was not as fully committed as we would have liked. So we're happy that they turned it around, but we still have a fight in front of us to make sure that this program continues. What this program does is, as I said, it is a part of our attempt to take advantage of the investments already made in the rooftop solar on people's homes, the batteries that they have, both in their cars and in their garages, and the batteries that businesses are deploying, and that the utility is deploying for that matter. We have in the Bay Area, we have AVA, our local community choice aggregation. You have Peninsula Clean Energy, you have Marin Clean Energy, the original community choice aggregator. These utilities that operate within PG&E territory or SDG&E territory, they are deploying distributed resources. And the DSGS program is a way to use those distributed resources cost effectively, time effectively to bring costs down. They make our system more reliable. There are co-investments, so both private and public investment has gone into them. They provide benefits to me as the homeowner, for example. I get reliability. If there is a blackout or a disruption, an accident or something, my home still gets power. But I'm also providing power back to both my neighbors and to the rest of the city, and to the whole system. That's what DSGS does, and most importantly, is it set up a way for the compensation to flow. If I'm providing a benefit to the system, then some of that benefit should come back to me as compensation. And some of the benefit should go to the system. Other people should see reductions in their bill. And that's true for every individual participating. That's what a power plant does. They say, I provide a benefit to you. I'm giving you electricity. Pay me for it. That's what we pay for in our bills.
Mm-hmm.
Who gets paid for what benefit is very important going forward for this transition. And the DSGS program was in some ways, it was a lens to say, okay, here are the people, all of these 10,000, 20,000, 200,000 homes participating in the DSGS. They are providing benefit. This is a channel to get some of that benefit returned to them, to compensate them for their investments and for their participation. And by operating the system this way, we are also providing benefits to all ratepayers, to the entire system, by using our equipment more efficiently, by not having to turn on a peaker gas plant that is going to blow smog all over the nearby communities, by not having to keep old, outdated coal plants or old gas plants online longer than they should be. We now have this clean, beautiful, virtual power plant comprised of California citizens and businesses that can eliminate or reduce the need for those other resources. And preserving that through the DSGS program was a great victory this year, but something we're going to have to really, really continue to work on going forward.
That is heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking, Sachu. You would have thought, one would have thought that Newsom would have done more in this regard, because done more to solidify this program, done more to solidify the savings for California residents. That's a very, very, very surprising. But hey, they've PG&E here, Southern California down south, SD, they got some powerful lobbyists. Those
They
folks
do.
they're very moneyed, but I think we all need to keep in mind that they're moneyed with our dollars. So
That's a great point, Sabrina. Right?
it is. It is.
These profits, these utility investments, those are our dollars.
That's our money. So I mean, we need to keep that in mind. When we go to the polls to vote come November, we need to make sure that the power is in our hands. So we've got a few more minutes left here. Sachu Constantine, what an amazing conversation. We got a few more minutes left here. Wrap it up in a bow. All those questions plugged into the DSGS program. Give us some hope. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, listen, um, the idea of a community power network, the idea of tying our mutual self-interest together through the technologies that we deploy is a fantastic model for us going forward. It's a model for the economy. It's a model for the way that we relate to each other. We are interdependent. We are independent actors and individuals, but we are all interdependent on each other and the systems that we build. Most of these community power network participation concentrations are in working class and rural communities across the state. Um, the 1 in 4 of the enrolled sites are in counties where the median solar adopter earns less than $100,000. And in California, less than $100,000 means something. It means that you are the one being impacted by these high skyrocketing bills and our continued dependence on fossil fuel. So the program is addressing the right people. It's addressing it in the right way. It is continued for the year. We have legislation from Senator Wiener, from Senator Becker, from Assemblymember Ward, all pushing at different ways to not only continue the deployment of these resources, but also specifically to refund and give more value to DSGS. That is a light for all of us to follow, because if a program like this exists and is successful, it's already one of the most successful in the country, or had been up until some of this uncertainty. If we follow a successful program like this, there is a bright future that involves all of us, that benefits all of us, that builds that reliable system, that builds that flexible, diverse, affordable, and clean energy system that we know we're going to need to depend on. The future is in electricity. How we generate that electricity really matters. DSGS shows us a way to invest that uses the best, cleanest sources of energy, puts that energy in the right place and in the control of the right people, works with existing infrastructure, and does it very, very quickly. That is the silver lining to all of this. We've preserved that ability for the moment. Let's rally around it and move forward. I think we can. I think there's a lot of appetite for it, from the top of the state to the bottom. There's lots that we can do, and California can restore itself as a leading light in this transition. I think we should not think of ourselves as alone in this fight in California. Illinois, Colorado, many of the states I mentioned, New York, Michigan, Minnesota, they are in this fight as well with us. And let's not forget how important it is for us to influence them, to help them, and to learn from them as we go forward.
Indeed, indeed. $100 million in funding cuts are anticipated for the DSGS program. Again, that acronym is Demand Side Grid Support. The Demand Side Grid Support program is an initiative by the California Energy Commission aimed at enhancing grid reliability. And by participating in the DSGS program here in the state of California, customers not only contribute to grid stability, but also have the opportunity to earn financial incentives while supporting a cleaner energy future. This is in effect until December of this year. And we go to the polls in November, folks. So, yeah, depends on who's governor, but it shouldn't depend on who's governor, because we all have the power to push this forward and to make this a reality, a solid reality, a real reality for the future to come. Sachu Constantine, wow, what an amazing conversation. This has been absolutely educational, entertaining, because you're so passionate. I appreciate you
do get
taking the
excited
time.
about this.
Yeah. That's your job. You do your job very, very, very well. Again, folks, Sachu Constantine is the executive director of Vote Solar, a leading national expert in the regulatory landscape of the solar industry. He has an impressive track record of successfully guiding strategy and operations for teams of energy experts and advocates. He's been at the California Public Utilities Commission. He used to be a worker there, staffer there. And he is an expert. 3 decades of experience advancing equitable, clean energy
They went by
policy.
fast.
Yeah, right? 3 decades. Well, you know what? We are so much better for all of your knowledge. Sachu Constantine, thank you so much for being on A Rude Awakening. Truly appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Sabrina, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Great talking to you, and keep fighting the good fight. This
That's
kind of
right.
programming is fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. And here's one more addition to this conversation. There is a link to an opinion piece that Sachu Constantine wrote for Bakersfield.com entitled, California Built the World's Largest Community Power Network. Why Dismantle It Now? And it was published on July 1st. So that's pretty much what our conversation was about, but it goes a little bit more in depth than our 47 minutes or so. And there will be a link to that op-ed in the show description page for A Rude Awakening at kpfa.org. And that does it for another edition of A Rude Awakening. I'm Sabrina Jacobs. A big thank you to my guest, Sachu Constantine, for taking the time. Kirsten is on the controls. The music on today's show is Cosmic Ear with Right Here, Right Now. I'll be back next week, same time, same place. Stay tuned for a rebroadcast of Democracy Now! Coming up next. And remember, good people, embrace
Around the wireless, folks, we've got exciting news from the world of radio.
Radio Day by the Bay returns to Alameda on Saturday, July 18th. Presented by the California Historical Radio Society, the event features live music, DJs, radio theater, vintage auctions, food, family activities, and free tours of the Radio Central Museum. The day celebrates the history, culture, and continuing impact of radio in the Bay Area and beyond. KPFA will be present, connecting with listeners and community members at the event. Radio Day by the Bay takes place at Radio Central in Alameda and is wheelchair accessible. Additional information is available at chrsradio.org/Radio Day.
Broadcasting from the past, present, and future of radio. We'll see you there.
Every Friday, KPFA brings you what corporate media won't. Project Censored exposes the stories buried behind the profit-driven newsroom. The truth they'd rather you never question. An economic update breaks down how power and money really works, who benefits, who pays, and how we fight back. 2 shows, 1 mission. Independent journalism that keeps you informed and unafraid. KPFA, truth that empowers. Voices you won't hear anywhere else.
The following is brought to you by the collective refusal to pretend everything's fine. This is 94.1 KPFA, 89.3 KPFB in Berkeley, 88.1 KFCF in Fresno, and online everywhere. Tell a friend at kpfa.org.
KPFA.